All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Just give me one sec to pull up the presentation, but I am here with Justin from Learndash and David Bullock, who developed Memberium, as well as Andrew from Memberium is here, and Heath, and I'll repeat this in a sec as more people come in, but Heath won't be able to join us, but he did send us some information about the questions that were asked to him directly, and then we've got some stuff to show you from their site. So we'll miss him. Unfortunately, couldn't make it. His apologies go out to everybody. But like I said, he kind of sent us some stuff, so we won't miss out on anything. So let's just give maybe another minute for some people to pop in, and we'll get going. Okay, and just to check, if you guys can, into the questions box here in the webinar, just put a yes if you can hear me and if you can see my screen. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Good interactive group. Appreciate that, guys. All right, and also as we go, if there's any other questions, please feel free to toss them in or kind of follow up to some of what we're doing. But we'll go ahead and kick it off. So make sure we got this recorded. Perfect. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to try to run through these questions fairly quickly so that we get to as many as we can. We may not be able to get to all of them. Anything we don't get to on this call, we will respond to you individually. So, you know, if you don't see the response in here or hear it in here, just know that we'll send you an email and a follow-up. So, you know, last week, I'm assuming basically everyone had seen the video that we released with myself and Justin Fairman from Learndash and Heath from Infusionsoft, kind of showing how Infusionsoft is now using Memberium and Learndash for some of their training for their employees, for their customers. Like I said, we have, click on here, we've got Justin Fairman from Learndash. So Justin, say hello, make sure everybody can hear you.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us.
Cool, cool, and we're getting some questions about the audio. I'm guessing most of you are still okay. It might be just one or two people. But if you do have a problem at any point, please throw it into the chat there. And then there's my little mug. Sorry to give you that, but that's me. I'm Micah from Memberium. And like I said, we've got some other people from Memberium here. But let's just dive into it. So one of the questions that came up, and by the way, we consolidated some of these because some people asked the same question. So one of them, just to get it out of the way, was someone asked, we're a customer of Infusionsoft. How can I see the inside of the website, the Kickstart courses? And what Heath was showing, Heath from Infusionsoft was showing a site that they are now letting new Infusionsoft customers into. But if you're an existing customer, you can just email. So if you email support@memberium.com and you just say, hey, this is my name, this is my email, I'd like to get into the Infusionsoft training site, then our team will pass that along to Heath and he'll get you into there. Because for now, it's Infusionsoft staff who's actually putting people into that site as part of the onboarding process. So again, anyone who wants access to that site, just go ahead and email support@memberium.com and we'll pass that along to Heath for you. And that way we just aren't giving out his regular address. So some of these slides, you're going to notice they're full of text. Some of them I broke up a little bit more. But I'm just going to go ahead and read the questions, and then Justin and I will both kind of pile on for the answers. So one person asked, I saw a few things in the video that I would love to be able to do with my site, but I don't know how they accomplished it. So for example, the completed text in the title of a course when a course is completed, and I'll show you guys an image of this, and the check mark on top of the image when the course is completed. I'd love to know how that was done. I have an idea of how to do it, but not totally sure. And it's the exact way we showed it is not an exact standard feature of Learndash, but to be honest, what we did, and I'll show you the thing here, is I guess I got to exit presentation mode. Bear with me one second. Not the best at Mac here.
Hey, as you try to find that, I can share a little bit, is that feedback is really great. We actually have plans now to enhance our own course grid add-on to, well, by default, I know this is stylized a little bit, but by default, there's a ribbon at the top where the price would normally be, or it will say free. We're going to update it so it's going to update with the progress. So if you're enrolled, it's going to say you're enrolled. If it's completed, it will say completed. It won't look exactly like this, but the functionality will be similar in terms of showing, the progress or what has been completed and what hasn't.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm sure people are going to appreciate that, because what I was going to show them is how we did it, and it is a little bit messy, but it'll give you an idea of some of the flexibility. So Justin, they already have a cool course grid thing, right? And Infusionsoft just said, hey, it would be cool if there was a check mark on the ones that they had already completed. And obviously, as an admin, these are all completed. So if it wasn't done, this would be like a gray little thing unchecked. And then also this word completed that follows each of these was put in. And the other change, I think, is that this says review course since it's been completed. If someone had not done the course yet, I believe it would say start course. And I'll just jump into the back end a little bit to show you how this was done. It sounds like Justin will have a much easier way to do it. And then we are going to create a more detailed tutorial. So I'll give you an overview now instead of getting too down in the weeds. But we'll create a more detailed tutorial on how you could go in and customize it. So what we did basically is we kind of took the Learndash course grid. And so we took its basic code and then just started modifying it. What this page really looks like, it's not a Learndash courses page. It's just a regular WordPress page. And on the page, what we're using is we're using Memberium custom shortcodes. And that's why I said, don't let this scare you, because it sounds like Justin's got a better solution. But in here, if I go to edit, just so we can see this a little bit, clicking on the wrong edit thing right there. Okay, so what we've got in this box is we've got several shortcodes, and the shortcode is all the way down to right here. So this little chunk is basically saying, hey, use this Memberium. Memc means Memberium custom, and then we just called the shortcode Learndash grid 4, and then we're feeding it some information. We're saying, what is the title? What is the tag in Infusionsoft that we know means it's completed? What image should be on top of it? So just a couple things there. And then this information, and you can see this repeats. So we have one Memberium custom shortcode reference for the first one, his IS Mobile, Snap, whatnot. And we have another custom shortcode for the second one, and we just repeat. So we have a bunch of shortcodes. Each one has the right title and image and tag and so forth. And that data is fed into this. This is that custom shortcode, LD grid 4. And sorry, I'm getting nerdy right from the beginning, but like I said, Justin's got a better solution, and we'll create an in-depth tutorial. But just to give you an idea, then those variables are basically fed into here. And so in here, we're saying, okay, if they have this tag, and the tag gets fed in from that other spot. So when we say here, completed tag equals 1104, it picks it up and it says merge in the completed tag here. And so we're saying if they have that tag, go ahead and display it this way. And just to show you kind of what's happening is you'll see here's where we merge in the title. And then we just typed the word completed. And what happens then is there's a switch right here. It says else has any tag. So it's saying, hey, for everyone who has the tag from here down to here is one part of the condition. And then this is the opposite condition. Basically, if you don't have the tag, then we run through a lot of the same stuff again, basically the same thing, but we don't put the green check mark on, and we don't put the word completed on. So it's kind of a, we manually coded the boxes, but really it's not a lot of code. Like this is the whole code that creates all those boxes, and then it's dynamically fed in which tag, which title, which image, and so forth. As I said, we'll make a more in-depth tutorial, and it sounds like Justin's improving his to the point probably where you won't even need this. But it's an example of, okay, here's how all this works together. If you want to, you can kind of work around anything that's set using some custom stuff. So with that, let me come back over here. Justin, do you want to add on to that?
No, I think that was a good overview. I mean, it was great feedback that we received from those of you who watched the original webinar, and so we definitely noted it down. Actually, work's already begun on it. I will say that there's going to be a little addition. For those of you on this call, you'll have inside scoop. In addition to be able to have a featured image, In the course grid, we're also going to allow you to have a featured video. So you can insert a video there. Maybe it's like a 1-minute overview description of the course that can be played. Just another option for ways that you want to display your courses.
Ah, that is beautiful. Sweet. Because, yeah, it was a little bit of a pain to do, I'm not going to lie. And really, it was more like a pain to tweak the design together, but it sounds like you guys all have it nice and polished. Very cool. So this is a very broad question, obviously, but I figured we could both kind of comment on it. So somebody just asked, what is your best strategy for implementation? And for me to take a quick swipe at it, I always like to just build the very, very simplest, membership thing you possibly can. So for example, if you're going to have a free membership level that you use as a lead magnet or an opt-in or whatever, I would build that first before building out your whole course structure. And I'd start feeding a couple members into there typically. And this is if you're first getting started. So my best strategy is always to start small, to keep it really simple, because then you can learn a little bit about the technology and the platforms and get comfortable with it. Otherwise, if you start really huge without knowing as much as you should about it, you're going to get down the road a ways and be like, oh, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have, done that. So that's typically what I advise people to do, is start small and simple, and then as you get more comfortable, add on to it. And just 2 days ago, I was talking to a client, and I was so happy to hear everything he said, because he's showing me a site, and he's saying, I really liked all these ideas, but I figured that I should, just start with this thing. And he had a beautiful site. He'd already put 300 members into it, and it was going really well, just at his one course at, I think, $47 or something. And then he planned on having an ongoing membership and higher price points and all that. But he didn't let that big grand strategy get in the way of just, making some money and taking the initial step. So that's my general advice to a broad question. Justin, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, this is a question that we get sometimes, and I think it's because when you have WordPress in general, there's so many different options that you can start playing with, and it's exciting, but it's also kind of overwhelming because there's so much there. What I generally say is, first, make sure your content is good to go. So let's assume you have your course content all ready. The first thing would be just set up your WordPress site. Forget Learndash and forget Memberium and all the other plugins. Just set up your theme. Because I think a lot of times people underestimate how long it takes to set up a theme. That's including pages like your contact pages, your about pages, whatever you want to have on the site. Make sure that those are set up to your liking with all the text that you want. And then once you have, the branding and the pages and all that stuff set up, then install Learndash. And if you already have your course content, you can just start dumping it right into Learndash, into your courses, your lessons, and then configure those options. So focus on the Learndash options for creating the course. And then once you have that all inputted and you like the flow of the course, then worry about how you're going to handle registrations, enrollments, or selling, or whatever you choose. Like if you're going to install a shopping cart, if you're going to use Memberium, and start adding the tags for Infusionsoft. So I find that just breaking it up in those those chunks where you're focusing just like on the WordPress site, then Learndash, then the enrollment, and then maybe adding the Infusionsoft points. That will help you from getting overwhelmed, because WordPress is conducive to shiny object syndrome. We all see cool plugins and we immediately install and just start tinkering with, and then we kind of lose track of where we are. So that's just that's a very high level, but hopefully some of you find that useful.
Yeah, I think that's really solid advice. Thank you. And obviously for all of you, it depends on where you're at in the process, but very solid. Yeah, thank you, Justin. So moving on. So we had this come in. I'm working on a 40-hour training, and I'm doing some research on how to keep the momentum going. So in the other video, Justin gave some good tips on that. He's saying, thanks for all those tips, and also for how to organize it so it's not so overwhelming. The micro-content concept is really hitting home for me. What I have now are 8 courses, each with 10 lessons that contain about 8 to 10 topics each. So just in case anyone missed that, it means he has like over 600 videos, I think, if I'm doing that math right. I'm rethinking this organization, as the learner may feel a little bit buried, as it will take about 5 hours to complete each course. So taking Justin's advice, breaking down the courses even further will provide an opportunity for a point system to allow for the user's choice. And then he says, in Heath's user dashboard, where were the courses grouped together to form steps? And this is again, in Heath's case at least, it was a little bit, I don't want to say artificial, but his steps were just Infusionsoft's way of thinking about it. And that's because their onboarding process, where they have a series of calls with every user who comes on, they call those kind of the steps. So each call is a step, and then they have some corresponding training in the site. But they kind of just called it that. It's not like, as far as I know anyways, that Learndash has a concept of steps. He just made courses, and they said, okay, these 3 or 4 courses, those are part of step 1. And so you can categorize courses within WordPress, and there is some filtering with Learndash where you can say, hey, show a list of courses, but only within this category. So you can do some of that filtering. But with what I showed you earlier, where he was kind of, where we helped him build that page with those custom shortcodes, he was able to do it pretty much the exact way he wanted, meaning by displaying the courses in a custom way. He just said, hey, I want this one, then this one, then this one. And because he can literally just move the shortcodes around, that's how he did it. And whichever shortcodes he put on the page, those are the lessons that showed up on that page. I know Learndash has a lot of functionality around this as well. Like you're not just limited to the regular course pages. You can use a Learndash shortcode. I think it's LD, like Learndash course list shortcode, and then filter that a bit. Justin, do you have any additional thoughts on that one?
No, I think that's pretty much what we recommend for people that want to create a custom course list. The shortcode will allow you to integrate that with like a page builder, which I believe Heath's site was using when you were demoing that a little bit. So that will give you a lot of flexibility as well.
Yeah, and we originally did it with the Learndash course grid shortcode. So we went down that road. And it was only when they wanted the check marks and different things that we broke out of it. So it will actually work for the organization. And in this case, for those of you watching, Justin's main point, I believe, like as it relates to this question, was to give them quicker wins, like let them complete a course quicker. So where I say this is maybe 600 videos where there's 8 courses and 10 lessons, and each of those lessons has 8 to 10 topics. You can almost say, let's, instead of having 8 courses, let's have 8 categories, each with about 10 courses in them, and each course might have 8 to 10 lessons. So if you kind of switch out some of those words to create more courses, people can have a little bit more frequent wins, basically. So the next question, this one I kind of like. So they wanted to know how to offer bulk upsells in our Learndash/Memberium area, for example, buy 4 courses for discount. And so that's one part. And then should we do this at checkout or place an offer inside the membership area? Or in the post-sale email sequence. And so my short answer to the second part of the question is all of those places. And I'll get into that in a sec, but to the top part of the question, so at least when you're using Memberium and Infusionsoft with Learndash, the access is really controlled by tags. It doesn't really matter what they buy. Their purchase has to give a tag, and the tag is what gives access to the content inside of Learndash. So if you have 4 courses in Learndash and you want to sell them individually, you can have 4 individual tags. And then if you had an additional tag that's like a bulk, upsell or whatever, bulk tag, get them all, kind of all access pass or whatever, then you just also apply that tag to the 4. So each of the 4 courses, course 1, for example, would have a tag for course 1 and the all access tag. And then the logic says, if they have either of these tags, give them access. Course 2 has the course 2 tag and the all access tag once again. So that way, whether they buy 1 a la carte or whether they take the upsell for the 4 course bundle, you're just switching around the tags. So it's a little bit separated from the purchase process in Infusionsoft, or at least it doesn't have to be, exactly lockstep with it. You can say, hey, if they buy this other program, give them all 4 tags or give them some sort of master tag. There's a lot of ways to do it. But the second part of the question, the reason I say you can do this in all places, not that you have to, but if it were me, I'd say, okay, when they check out after buying 1 course, we say, great, you're going to love it, whatnot. If you want to upgrade to the full package, we'll give you some sort of offer, right? Let's say you give them a really deep offer at that time, like 75% off. Not that you have to. But then inside the members area, what I would do is I would have a timed upsell where a week later, meaning in Infusionsoft, you set up a sequence that in 7 days gives them a tag. And in Memberium, you say, if this tag exists, show this ad, or basically, show some text with a button to buy. So a week into the course, it says, hey, we hope you're enjoying things. We just wanted to, and I'm, not thinking from a copywriter's perspective here, so forgive my clumsiness, but basically we just wanted to see if you were interested in these other courses, right? You'd obviously sell it better, but now that you've had a taste, are you sure you don't want to upgrade to the full thing? We'll still give you a half off or a quarter off or something. And then obviously also send some corresponding emails to that. One of the things we did for a major client a while ago was we timed their email sequences. Every time in an email sequence, it would say, hey, here's this special offer. It would also give them a tag so that inside the membership site, that tag would also open up that special offer. So it was kind of coherent all the way through. So at least from an Infusionsoft perspective, you can do it in all those places. And I might have, again, the follow-up sequence kind of in sync with what shows up in the membership area, as well as do an upsell at the time of purchase. Now, Justin, for people who maybe aren't using this whole combo of things, is there anything you guys do in Learndash for upsells? Any like Learndash-esque side of this?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So certainly if you're selling with a shopping cart like WooCommerce or Easy Digital Downloads, those WordPress shopping carts, they have options. But one thing that's kind of cool in Learndash that you can do is you can use the course complete shortcode. And you can put this on the course page, for example. And you can put any kind of text or message or sales jargon or whatever you want, maybe an upsell video, in between that shortcode. So I think it's course_complete. Like that's the shortcode itself. That we have documentation on it, but it's you put that shortcode on the page. You can put in a video, and then that video won't show until the person completes the course. So this is like an upsell at the time of course completion, which is great for like I said in the original call, like cross-selling, because these people just finished a course. They're maybe excited about it. They want to know what's next. Maybe you invite them for a coaching call. A mastermind or something like that. It doesn't have to be a course that you promote. Another thing this is kind of new. I just saw this within the past couple of weeks. There's a free plugin, and I'm forgetting. I think it was Woo Ninjas that created it, so I want to give them credit. But there's a free plugin on WordPress.org. It's for it allows you to, depending on a quiz performance, to auto-enroll people into other courses. So like say somebody gets 100% on a course, and you can plop them into whatever course you like, but maybe they get 50%, you can put them into another course. So this isn't really upselling because obviously there's no sale happening there, but it's a similar concept. You're still guiding people to a path that you want them to based on how they performed. I think that plugin is called Adaptive Learning for Learndash, but if you go to WordPress.org and just put in Learndash, it will show up, and it's pretty neat. I was playing around with it a little bit, and it's pretty slick. I like it. Goes in well with what we were talking about, Micah, in our last call, with the kind of point system and unlocking different courses based on earning certain points within a course. So I feel like I want to really dig into using those two features together because I think there's some really cool things that can happen.
I love it. And I'm always sincere when I introduce Justin and say, like, I'm really glad to have him on the call and grateful for his time because I'm always learning stuff from him I didn't know about either of those things. So it's really cool. Awesome. So let's jump on to the next one. So someone asked, is it only videos you used for learning, or is there anything else you used to create lessons, for example, Articulate? And at least for Heath's site, what we showed, and for the sites I do, I haven't used Articulate. I know they kind of talked about potentially using it, but as far as I know, no, they're not. And I'm not even that familiar with Articulate. Justin, are you familiar with it?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so for those that may not know what it is, and it sounds like that to you, Micah, it's a platform that allows you to create e-learning programs, usually in PowerPoint, but it's since kind of became its own standalone thing. So you can create like online courses, and that stuff can be tracked on a learning management system or a learning record store. So you could use those in Learndash. There's a few ways that you can do that. So there's a free plugin. Well, gotta love that. There's a free plugin that somebody created. It's on WordPress.org, and I'll make sure to post a link in a second. But that will allow you to embed an Articulate storyline course. So those of you familiar with Articulate, you know what I'm talking about. It will allow you to embed that, which is kind of like a video, into like a topic, for example. And when somebody gets through that Articulate course, then the topic marks complete. So they can't mark it complete before they finish it. So it's kind of like an auto mark complete thing. So that's really slick. It can get more technical though if you want to use XAPI, also known as Tin Can API, and there's a couple integrations to do that. There's people that do that with success and they really enjoy it. I will say that the setup it does take a little bit of time to configure, but once it's done, it's all in the background. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Nice. And there is another question actually about that API a little bit down the road. So you might have just answered their question a little bit as well. But thank you, that's perfect. So moving on here. So this is something that I've run across as well, and maybe Justin, you have something for this, but they asked, if I have a monthly continuity program and I use Learndash, besides always creating new programs, any advice on other techniques to keep the fast-paced people paying monthly? So power users, I think they're saying, who are going to chew through the content, how do you keep them engaged? So I'll let you have the first swipe at it, Justin.
It's a great question. I will share what I've seen, and actually, Micah, you've interviewed Troy Dean, so if any of you have seen that interview or haven't yet, go to the Memberium site and check out that interview. But Troy is a good friend, and we talk a lot about his setup. And so he has a course or multiple courses that he sells, but you're right, like when the content's done, it's kind of done. So how do you keep that momentum? He's decided to, and I wholeheartedly agree with this, build a community. So he's got a community first that's supplemented by courses. Obviously, he's selling his course, and that's where like the value is, and that's what people are buying. But in addition, he's having regular coaching calls or webinars. He has like a private Facebook group, I believe, and things like that. So I don't know the exact pricing structure, but I know that there's like an upfront price to get his course, and that gives you access to the material, the networking opportunities, these webinars, the Facebook group, because he really wants you to succeed. And then if you want like that following year, you can continue payment. I don't think it's the same full price. I think it's like a portion of that price to maintain your access to these to these social networking kind of outlets. And he also even has live, like he got to the point where he has live events now, and like people will join him in a city, usually in the US somewhere, to see face to face, see the person. So he's creating like a real culture and community. I think that's an excellent way to go. It also, during that year's time, it gives you time to think about and get ideas from your current learners about what else they want to learn. So you'll get like upsells or something. And I know he does have upsell courses and extra modules they can purchase, and he took that based on their feedback. Nice, yeah, and hopefully somebody can put in the chat, if they haven't already, a link to that interview with Troy, because he's fast and furious with really good ideas and insights into getting and keeping members. So yeah, I'd agree, that's a great resource. A couple of thoughts that always come up to me on this question is, depending on the business, keeping people forever may or may not be appropriate. I know some people who create info products or ongoing continuity programs, right? They feel like they do have to deliver content every single month, and that is one way to do it. But not all subject matter lends itself to content every month. Meaning, if it's high tech or if it's in a subject that kind of changes pretty quickly, then it makes a lot of sense, right? You're always going to have new content. But if it's something where you really put the information down, like if I was going to teach basic math, like basic addition and subtraction, it might be a little hard to have an ongoing continuity program forever, right? To keep up with the students who are going to, get through it really quick, the power users. I know there's a couple things you can do. So for example, you can take your power users and in a community, like Justin's saying, build a community, you can make them moderators, for example, and that might keep them around. I know from a bunch of people, the general advice is, people will buy or they'll come for the course or the information, and they'll stay for the community. And the other big thing that some people stay for is the curation of the content. So, if you have a good wiki, basically, of your content, I know that can be sticky because people will use it as a reference.
But to me, just from a pure, just putting on my business hat, not my like teaching training hat, it's like, well, at some point, I feel like there's a diminishing return to continuing to making, if you continue to make more content versus if you come back to the beginning and try to put more people in the front of the funnel. Obviously, both are good, but depending on how much subject matter you have to teach, how much it changes, how relevant, you talking to them every single month is, it may or may not always make sense. With Troy is a good example. He is kind of in the tech space, right? WordPress and that space. So he's always going to have something new to talk about because it's always changing. For other people I've talked to, it's like, well, if you get to the end of that, you can stop. Like, don't feel bad about stopping and then going after more clients. And one of the things I heard, I think it was from, I want to say it might have even been from Dave D, but he said, there was a quote where he said, he was talking about basically two magicians, and one was really successful and one wasn't. And the one who wasn't successful, they were always looking for new tricks and new, things to show people. And the one who was really successful, he said, don't change your act, change your audience. So like get a really good act down and then find more audiences. So there's, just to throw out that kind of counterpoint of there's a lot you can do to keep people engaged, but at the same time, you may not have to, depending on some of your goals. So it doesn't negate anything like about keeping people engaged. It's just kind of the other side of the coin.
Hey, Micah, before you head on to the next slide, this is kind of related, so maybe it's a good transition question, but Ron had asked, what are your views on access to a library, for example, like Digital Marketer Labs? I will say that is definitely one viable way forward if you have courses or more than one course. For those of you not familiar with Digital Marketer Labs, it's digital marketers kind of like membership to access these different trainings they have. Another one that is extremely successful that you've probably heard of is lynda.com. They do that and they do it really well. So I think that's a perfectly viable model for online courses.
Yeah, definitely. And there's, continued access to the library is great. I know for especially digital marketer, a lot of people say that they stay part of that program, for the Facebook group, basically to mine the community for answers when they need to as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know Troy does that well, but I'll put out a word of caution. I'm pretty sure it's against Facebook's terms of service to sell access to a group. I think there's creative ways you can get around that and say it's like a bonus and stuff, part of the course. But just if you're going to do that, make sure you do your own research, because you don't want to like lose your group or something because you weren't doing something to play nice by their rules.
Yeah, very good point. So next question, how are you handling the following two issues? Number one, optional content. Is there any way to include optional lessons that you've found to work with this setup, meaning someone can still complete a course even if not completing a particular optional lesson? So Justin, does Learndash have anything for that?
Not yet, no. So right now, lessons, anything that's tied to a course has to be complete for that course to be complete. It's an interesting concept. I think we will be in a better position to do something about that as we enhance some of the back end. So for example, we're making it possible soon to have one lesson and apply it to multiple courses. And so, once we get that kind of logic figured out, then I think we can look and approach that setup. But what you could do in the meantime is, this is a nice workaround, is you can use the student shortcode in Learndash to create a regular page in WordPress. Then you use the student shortcode, and you can specify. You can put content between the student shortcode, and you can specify the course that user has to have access to in order to see that content. And then you could put that, you could put a link to that page, maybe in a lesson or in the sidebar of that course for extra resources. So it's kind of like a bonus lesson. They can go there, they can see it. If somebody isn't enrolled in that course, they will see nothing because they're not a student. So it still lets you protect the content, but it's not going to be tied to the mark complete component. So that's one workaround that I've seen people use.
Nice, yeah. And one that we've had people do a little bit that's a little bit similar. We'll say, okay, if you have an optional lesson between lessons 1 and 2, maybe actually put it on the same page as lesson 1. So on lesson 1, we would have video 1, and then below it, either in a little like accordion kind of thing you can open up, or not. You just put the optional lesson. And so that's kind of a chintzy workaround. I like that student shortcode more. But yeah, with some Memberium shortcodes, sometimes people will say, and especially when they say, hey, and if they have this additional tag, how do I make this extra lesson show up? And we'd say, well, you can't really have a lesson show or hide. It's either part of the course or not, like Justin saying, but you can have a video within another lesson show or hide, depending. So people have gotten creative with that a little bit as well. So number 2, completion requirements. We have very stringent requirements to make sure our folks are watching the entire content, so we cannot simply rely on the mark complete button. And this is the one I was saying you might have kind of answered, but we can add to it. But are using the XAPI Grassblade as an add-on to allow bookmarking of videos, as well as making sure we could track consumption. Do you have any experience around that? And I know you do, Justin, so maybe you can fill this in. And do you find that just marking complete is normally sufficient for tracking, or how much should they be trying to use the API?
Yeah, that's a good one, and definitely situational. I think it kind of depends on the purpose of the training. For like compliance type training, where you need to verify that somebody's watched it, XAPI is great for that. Grassblade is an add-on created by Next Software Solutions, and you would tie that into a learning record store, and Grassblade LRS is a good one to choose because it ties in tight with Learndash. So there are some extra investments there, and there's extra setup, but essentially what it allows for is the prevention of progression in a course until the completion, until the video has been completed. So I will say that we're going to bring that functionality outside of XAPI and make it native to Learndash. I don't have a timeline on when that's going to happen, but the conversation happened last week. So it's on our roadmap for sure.
Cool. And yeah, if you guys have follow-ups, you can always be tossing those into the chat as well. And I know there's questions coming into the chat, so we'll come back around to those just in case you guys are wondering what we're doing with some of those. So this one, I don't even think this was the joke slide. The next one is the joke slide. I know there's a lot of text on here, but the next one, anyways, is much bigger. So this one I thought was really interesting. So they're talking about creating continuing education and medical education content. And they're saying they actually need them to take a test before they watch the content to kind of gauge what they know, then take a test after they watch the content. And then after all that, take another test maybe 30 days down the road. So they're kind of doing like pre-test, test during, and post-test later. So Justin, have you ever seen people do this? They're basically asking exactly what functionality does Learndash have in this scenario, and is there anything missing from the functionality so that they can put this together? Sorry, I'm summarizing, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I answer questions like this very often, and I think what's always funny is, for me, and interesting, is seeing the kind of setups that people need for their learning sites. Everybody defines it differently. Everybody needs something like that's super specific to their group. So sometimes it can be done in Learndash without any custom configuration. Other times it can't. What I've seen before, I've seen people do pre-tests. For example, in the context of take this test, and depending on how you do, we'll give you a recommendation on like your learning path that you should take. With that free plugin I mentioned earlier, that is going to be really cool because you can have them take a pre-test, and then it will just automatically enroll them in their learning path based on how they do. So that would be like the example of the pre-test. Then mid-test, I mean, certainly you can have quizzes as users go through a course, and that can just be on a lesson or on a topic. For mid-level test, if they're just checkpoint quizzes and they don't require like a passing percentage, then put the passing threshold down to something really low. You can still record their score and give them points and give them feedback based on how they do. So for example, in Learndash, you can have up to 12 unique responses based on the score that somebody achieves. So if they're doing well, when they get 100%, you can give them a certain message. If they fail it, you can give them another. If they're anywhere in between, up to 12 different buckets, I guess, you can give them specific feedback on their performance. And then, of course, at the end, you can have a final quiz, final exam, whatever you want to call it. a lot of times people will just assign a certificate to that piece of it, and you can include on your certificates like aggregate scores across all quizzes with some of the certificate shortcodes that we have. So there is a way to kind of tie that pre, mid, and post quiz together. The bones are there. Will it work for everybody's exact use case? No, but there is something there that can be worked with.
Cool. Yeah, that, like I said, I keep picking up these little things. It's like, oh, we should do that. So thank you. So here's the joke slide. I put it all on one slide, not to be serious. I broke it out onto other slides, but that was one of the questions we got. So here it is kind of broken down. So are there any issues with Learndash and WP themes? I'm currently using Pressive from Thrive Themes. Their suite of marketing tools that accompany the theme are excellent. So I hope I do not have to switch themes or create a learning dedicated site. I don't know of any issues from my side. Justin, do you know of any issues with Learndash and their tools?
So Thrive Themes, I know people use their content, page content builder. Kind of like, I think you were showing a different one, but Visual Composer, I think that was earlier on Heath's site. But yeah, Thrive Content Builder works. It's pretty slick. You know, it's a nice content builder. Beaver Builder will work. So there's a few that we would maybe point you to. I think our demo site uses the free Elementor page builder, so that's worth a look if you are looking for something. So yeah, I can't think of anything offhand that would conflict.
Yeah, and I think we are mostly the same way. I mean, for the most part, both Learndash and Memberium, we follow the WordPress coding standards, and so as long as the theme is doing the same thing, typically there's not an issue. There's a couple themes, like I know Optimize Press, for example, they kind of did their own thing, and so it didn't work automatically, so we had to add some extra code to make some things work. But typically a theme isn't an issue. So yeah, I'd basically agree with that. And Dave's on here, who developed Memberium, and I told him, like, hey, if any of these you have something to add to, chime in, but he's been silent so far, so we can assume that's a safe answer. So another part of that same giant question, should a membership or LMS structure be in a separate domain from a blog or website? And if so, why? So Justin, do you want to swing at that one first, and then I'll go?
Yeah, absolutely. We get that question quite a bit. So I think it's all situational. So what I tell people is, like, if you have a main business site and that's where everybody's coming to see your offering, and maybe you have multiple offerings, maybe you have courses and consulting and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that do that. I would say put it on Learndash and Memberium on a separate site, like courses.yourdomain.com or learn.yourdomain.com. And the reason I say that is because your learning program most likely is going to need different configuration and setup than your main site. Like if you have certain plugins that you use on your main site that don't really apply to the learning site, then you can avoid some of that bloat. So that's nice. I think another advantage is that you can maybe get more flexible on the theme you use. So you can use one of those, the Buddy Boss theme, for example, Social Learner, that's a popular one. University theme is a popular one. So you can use those different elements on a separate site more easily, obviously, than you can do it on the main site. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the best way. I think you certainly can have it on your main site if, for example, you just want something really quick, or it's like not a lot of courses and just a couple, and that would be fine to put on the main site. I've seen people do that. If it were me creating like a course on something, I would probably put it on a subdomain, just because for me, I like to separate those two different purposes of those sites. Because like if I have a sales site, I want that to be the sales site, and or a company site, for example. But if I have the learning site, I want that to be its own standalone entity. But Micah, I'm sure you've seen different setups too with Memberium.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with basically what you said. Separating the two will eliminate some of the bloat you can get. And just so everyone understands what we're saying, if you've got 10 plugins on your main site, like on your blog, and half those plugins are about blogging, they're not necessary, obviously, in your membership area. And if you have 10 membership-related plugins or learning-related plugins, they're not necessary in your sales area. And for some sites, if you put all that together, it can get a little bit heavy. But again, like Justin said, it's a little bit situational. If you are just doing, one or two little membership things, keeping it simple, a lot of times it is simpler to keep on your main site, because that way you're only having to maintain one site, as WordPress updates and whatnot. You've just got the one site. I'd say one other consideration is the navigation on the site. So like Justin said, you can get more flexibility with your theme by separating the two. So you can have, for example, Thrive Themes is a good sales plugin on the main site to do what it does. So that other question we came across where they were saying, can I use, these tools with this theme and this whole tool set? If you're really going to get intense with your sales site and do a lot of stuff, it might be easier to have it separate and your membership site separate if they're very different experiences. Some companies I know, they really want the exact same experience. It's like, the membership page should look exactly like my blog in every way. The only difference is it's locked down. And there are advantages to that. As they're on the membership page, they're still seeing the sales navigation. So if they can cross-sell or upsell into different products, that can be an advantage. But if you have a ton of content, like that example where he had, 8 courses, each with 10 things and 10 other things, that's where I would move it. I mean, many other cases, but that's where I would for sure move it into its own site, because then all the navigation space is for the learners. It'll actually improve the learning experience to only have navigation related to what they're doing. And let me see if it will let me out of this presentation for a sec.
Micah, while you're looking at that, this is Dave. The one other consideration that I always look at is growth. And if you're looking at growing, it can be good to make some of those decisions up front and move it to a separate page, because the reasons that Justin gave are pretty much every single reason I was going to give. Breaking it apart from step one makes it sometimes easier to scale. So that's one other consideration.
Yeah, very true. Because if you do start too small, some people do, they just say, hey, I've got a site, I'll throw a members area on it. Then you might have to do a more painful switch later. So it might be easier to just start outside. The only reason I brought this up was just to show you guys like an obvious example where Infusionsoft, here's their main site. This login, I'm sure, goes off to their login screen. Infusionsoft.com, their subsites are progressionpath.infusionsoft.com for employees. And over here, I believe SBSA, which is Small Business Success Academy, .infusionsoft.net for their customer-facing training. So it wouldn't make sense for them, obviously, to try to load a membership site onto their main site when this main site is having to do a really strong job of sales, right? So very obvious example, but just to bring it up, it's like, yeah, I mean, they're not going to want in their membership area a bunch of navigation related to this, right, to their software. They just want navigation related to training in this case. So definitely situational, but yeah, I agree with both Dave and Justin on that.
Hey, Dave, I'm going to toss this question to you because I feel like you'll have some good points. The question came in about SSL. Any reason to set up SSL for the membership site?
Yeah. So something new that several of the leading browsers are doing is they are now throwing up insecure page warnings when somebody goes to a page with a login screen. It's no more insecure than it's ever been, but with that new warning, you may spook users by not having an SSL encrypted login page. If you're encrypting the login page, you might as well encrypt all the pages. It gives people a sense of security. It kind of up-levels you a little bit with what you're doing, and there's no chance of getting any nasty warnings showing up in your browser.
Yeah, one other reason to have an SSL on the site is if you are, and there's a question about this further down, but if you are allowing users to log in and update their credit card information, any handling, obviously, of credit card information, you're going to have an SSL on the site for. So that's another reason. And if you can do it from the beginning, even better, just so you don't have to deal with it down the road.
And it's a good point to raise about credit cards is we've seen people use something like Cloudflare. Cloudflare has a service called SSL Anywhere, I believe. And what they do is they encrypt SSL from the browser to Cloudflare, but they don't make you use SSL on your site. So it looks like your site's SSL, but it actually isn't. And that's not really sufficient. That will make the ugly browser warnings go away, but it's not enough to handle credit cards. So if you are going to handle credit cards, make sure you actually have an SSL on your site.
Yeah, perfect.
And so I think a follow-up question to that, not to beat a dead horse with SSL, but how would somebody best go about that, Dave?
I would contact the web host. Most of the web hosts have some kind of SSL option. They can take care of all of the nitty-gritties for you. And then at that point, it's just very straightforward. You just switch your website in the settings, change your URL to the SSL URL, and then set yourself a calendar reminder, because every year those certificates expire. And it just happened to Infusionsoft a week or so ago. All of their SSL certs expired, and they didn't catch it till an hour or so later. So you want to make sure, and that's happened to a ton of companies. It's happened to Google. It's happened to everybody sooner or later. So make sure that you set a calendar to renew that certificate before it expires.
Yeah, no, definitely good advice on the SSL side. So this is, again, part of that one giant question still. Should I use Learndash or Memberium to manage membership, given that I want to eventually create group or company memberships and create affiliate or co-branded memberships? Are the features built into Learndash or Memberium to enable co-branding of content and courses with my affiliates? Co-branding would not entail custom CSS, but would just allow co-brand logo, user grouping, and affiliate/co-brand reporting. Or will this require custom PHP encoding? Basically, hopefully everyone understands what they're saying, but basically they're saying, I believe, that when a user logs in who is sent by company A, the site is styled as company A. And when a user logs in who is sent by company B, the site is styled kind of toward company B. And with Memberium connecting to Infusionsoft, we do have some functionality that relates to their affiliate program. So we can, for example, detect, okay, which affiliate did this person come from? So when they log in, we can fetch their affiliate referral information, and then we can know, hey, so welcome John Doe to the site. We see that you were sent by Jane Doe, right? So we can tie those two together and show some information from the affiliate's record who sent the user on the site. You could, through some, clever jimmy rigging, for example, show a logo like they're saying, potentially change some colors or things, and again, show who sent them in, and we know people who are doing that. It's not the easiest. If you wanted to go deep, I would imagine there's some custom PHP. Dave, do you?
Yeah. So, like Mike is saying, could you jury rig something together with spit and baling wire? Yes, with no coding. I'd recommend themes are built in PHP. They're not complicated. Memberium exposes the data about the currently logged in member. We provide some real simple PHP functions to look at that data. And so there's no reason why you can't do a little bit of PHP code, for example, to swap out logos and do some personalization, some customization of the templates based on who the customer is.
I can't speak to the Infusionsoft Memberium connection on this because that, with the affiliates and all that, which sounds pretty elaborate, but I can speak to, from Learndash perspective, how you would do this. You don't have to, in this case, learn PHP, because there is a add-on. It's not free, but it's by Uncanny Owl, that will allow you to show different images and such depending on the learner's group. So in Learndash, you can put learners into groups, and then you can have like custom group branding, I guess is the best way to put it. And so if you say you have company A that's in group 1 and company B in group 2, you can show their logos when they log in, as opposed to them seeing maybe one generic logo. So it's I don't know the price of it offhand, but it certainly would be cheaper than hiring a coder, I guess, to figure that out. So that is by uncannyowl.com. I think it's their group registration, or no, not group registration, group branding add-on or something like that. So that would be worth checking out.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you could get some connection between the Infusionsoft affiliates and the plugin Justin's talking about, because we have the ability to say, if the user has this tag in Infusionsoft, add them to that group in Learndash. And it sounds like then in Learndash, based on group, you could customize that a little bit. There might be a few little gaps there, depending on the exact use case, but hopefully that, at least whoever asked this question, hopefully that kind of sends you in the right direction. You can ask follow-up if you need to. So another question, can you recommend a WordPress plugin to manage author profiles and listings that works with Learndash? So anything around authors for Learndash, Justin?
Like course authors? I'm not sure.
So. Yeah, I think so that someone can say, hey, here's this course, I like it. Let me click over to the author and see what other courses they're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of plugins, to be honest, that do that, but I do know themes will do it. There's a few on Theme for a second that are, like, when you go to a course page, it'll be like, it's not, they call it an instructor, like your instructor is, and then they have maybe an image in their avatar there and a little bio. So I've seen that built into themes. I apologize. I can't think of anything that is plugin centric on that piece.
Gotcha. And this next question is kind of, I think, a continuation of that. Again, it's from the same person. But he talks about how in a prior life as a corporate business optimization consultant / digital strategist, I used a system that allowed user tracking that built user profiles based on frequency of engagement with persona profiled content, pages, areas, etc. And he says Jermaine is doing this. Those of you who are familiar with Jermaine Griggs in the Infusionsoft space, he's a total boss at all this kind of stuff. Sounds like he's got some custom plugins. So, between the three of us, Justin, Dave, can Memberium, or can Learndash do anything basically to count the number of times, someone's visiting any of these profiles, or do we know of any plugins or anything? And Dave, that's maybe a question for you. Would this overload their API limit? Are there any workarounds? What do you guys think?
Yeah, it would be, to store that information in Infusionsoft would be very API intensive. It's much easier to keep counters in WordPress. And there may be some solutions that might require a little bit of custom work to store the data in WordPress and then extract it out and then merge it into Infusionsoft periodically. Infusionsoft is not really designed for bulk merging of data like that, though.
Gotcha. And if you could, Dave, I believe you're talking about kind of the Memberium counter shortcode or the custom field storage. Yeah, if you could put a link in the chat to that. Basically with Memberium, we are passing data back and forth between Infusionsoft a lot, but Dave came up with a system that we use, for example, for credit-based sites where they want people to use credits to purchase courses, where we can store those credits just directly in the WordPress database without using the API. So if there's something where it needs to be updated frequently, that typically makes a lot more sense. And this slide just shows where that one person's pile of questions ended. So a simple question, do you guys build a Thrive site? And I'm assuming what they're asking is, does it work with Thrive themes? Which, yeah, it definitely does. So I think we covered that earlier, but yeah, it does. So this was a question about, he basically said, I'd love to chat with Heath about implementing the whole, if a support staff member is logged in, they only have access to their courses. And if a coaching staff member is logged in, they only have access to their courses. This is actually super easy. It's kind of like the default performance of Memberium, where if there's anything someone doesn't have access to, we will just automatically hide it from the menu. So that's pretty much what Justin is doing there, is he's saying, hey, I've added these WordPress menu items, but since those menu items lead to a page that is protected by Memberium, it's only going to show up if they have that tag or not. So if you just use the regular WordPress menu that leads to pages, and those pages are protected by Memberium, again, they'll just hide. You can override that in different ways. And you can even do, you can do some extra things. For example, there's a plugin called Menu Visibility Control. Oh, sorry about that. And the Menu Visibility Control will let you filter on most any data that you have. So you can filter on, if they have this tag and not that tag, or if they have all these tags, if they're part of that membership level or not, if they have access to the page. So you can get more granular, but in its simplest terms, this is kind of the default way that it's meant to function. So hopefully that makes sense and doesn't need too much more explaining. But if you're setting this up and you have an issue with it, you can definitely just contact support. So would love to know how to customize my progress bar in Learndash so it has the "you are here," etc. I'm just beginning to roll out my test of core content, and then I'm good to go live. So Justin, if you want to talk for a second about what is available with the progress bar as far as customization goes, and then I think they might be referencing that custom graphic that Heath had in the site, but can you tell us a little bit about the Learndash progress bar?
Sure, yeah. So the progress bar in Learndash, there's a few different places visually where you're going to see the progress. There's obviously the bar that's going to be in either on the page via shortcode, or if you insert the progress bar widget, it will be there. There's also the course navigation widget, which is going to show you your lessons and where you are in the course and if you're complete. There is also on the course page where you can see which lessons have been complete, as well as on the profile. So there's a lot of different places where there's progress bar. Can it be customized? Of course, the answer is yes. There isn't, we don't have any like documentation on that specific piece. But Micah, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought during that webinar I'd mentioned or I'd asked Heath something similar, and he said it was just a custom image at the top of the page that he was just updating based, I think, in Memberium with tags. So if they were at a certain point in the course, it would show them like this new updated image that showed like a "you are here" item. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. And so without bouncing over to the page for everyone listening, he basically, if he has step 1, 2, 3, and 4, on the step 1 page, he has a custom graphic that shows a timeline or like a list of what people are going through, and then it had a big "you are here" with an arrow kind of pointing, hey, you're in step 1. And very simply on step 2, on the step 2 page, he just had that same graphic, but the arrow was moved to step 2. So he was making it look dynamic, but I'm pretty sure those were just custom graphics that he put on the right pages so that whichever page they were on, it showed them where they were. It wasn't really a dynamic function, if that makes sense. Okay, cool. So push on here. This is a very similar question, so we might not need to go into it too much, but they were basically asking again about the step 1, 2, 3, and 4 that are available under the menu on the side. And part of this, I really got to figure out some hotkeys or something to get from the presentation to the browser, but some of that's just his custom navigation. As we explained earlier, he was setting up just regular WordPress pages. Therefore, he can make whatever navigation he wants. And so they were saying, those pages that are available under the Kickstart courses in that side menu, the answer is no, he didn't really use a Learndash category tag necessarily for that. It was just, custom pages he created and then just put in the menu in the order he wanted. So by naming it that, to the user, it appears like it's, again, dynamic, but he just kind of arranged them that way to appear that way. Justin, if you have anything to add on to that, feel free.
No, I don't. I think that's that's generally that's what I've seen not just Heath do, but I've seen other people do as well.
Cool. This next question. Basically, what is the benefit of using Memberium along with Learndash and Infusionsoft? And do you have any tips about how to make these three operate as one cohesive unit? So in general, Learndash, I think you can possibly connect it with Infusionsoft another way, or like you can accept payments another way. But for the most part, and this is a little self-serving, but I think it's an honest answer, for the most part, if you're using Infusionsoft and Learndash, you really want Memberium between the two, because it's going to facilitate a lot of data transfer and a lot of additional functionality that most Infusionsoft users are after. They want their membership site to really sync up with their Infusionsoft campaigns, for example. So there's the ability to say, when you talk about making one cohesive unit, what most people are doing, and in fact, I will bounce out and go to this, if I can. There we go. So I pulled up this campaign in Infusionsoft earlier. And so in here, this is an Infusionsoft campaign for those of you who don't recognize it. But this is a sequence of emails, for example. So there's these emails that are on timers that we're going to send to people. And what we're trying to create is a very, streamlined, cohesive user experience where they buy in Infusionsoft. If I go back here, there's some stuff about them buying. And we, do some different things. And then we send them an email saying, hey, go in and watch the theory of automation. We send a couple reminder emails. And then in Learndash, when they click Mark Complete, it achieves this goal in Infusionsoft and pushes them into an email series that says, hey, congratulations, you did it. You're going on to this next section. And so really what you're doing by putting them all together is you're saying, on the website side where the user logs in, they're getting a very Learndash looking experience, but that is syncing with Infusionsoft and the emails they're getting. So when they complete something, they get an email in their inbox, good job, go ahead and continue. Or if they haven't completed it in some days, it's like, hey, we noticed you haven't been back to the site for a little while. Is there anything we can help you with? If you have 5 minutes, go ahead and hop in and study. So it's a lot in syncing the campaign with the membership site experience. But really, the whole thing is designed to work together. So I'm guessing the person who asked that question hasn't gone through some of the other case studies we have. I would say if you go to the Memberium site, for example, if you look at the Troy Dean interview that Justin had mentioned earlier, you can see how they're using those tools to create a really tight user experience. And that's kind of the goal. So yes, they are totally separate tools, but the combination of them creates the user experience in the site. The email communication that they're getting is synced up to it. And for you, the admin, it creates some additional reporting and information in Infusionsoft that you can act on to upsell, cross-sell, and kind of ascend them into some other levels. So that's kind of my take on it. Justin, what would you say?
I would echo that. I know that you guys are the gurus with all things Infusionsoft, so I can't speak as intelligently about those connections, but I do know that if you have a course and you're using WordPress and you're using Learndash and you want to connect Infusionsoft, then Memberium is going to give you that tight integration for all the reasons that Micah said. I mean, some of the most successful and elaborate sites that I see using Learndash are using Learndash in conjunction with a CRM, an outside CRM. So it could be something like Infusionsoft, ActiveCampaign, et cetera, like all these things centered around automation, all these services centered around automation. So, when we see Digital Marketer for a while there, when their certification program was running Learndash and Memberium, there's a reason for that, because it gives a lot of value to the learner and also to the company to see the insights of how the people are interacting with their content and kind of where they are in the funnel. So that's how I see it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So kind of going on, and this was an interesting question I floated to Dave earlier. So can you create local administrators who can manage the curriculum for each membership level without any crossover? And what I said to Dave was my uneducated answer is no, not that I know of anyways. So Dave, Justin, Dave first, do you know of a way to do this or have any creative ideas, or is it maybe something to think about?
You might be able to do it with roles and assigning, make that administrator the publisher of that content and make them an editor.
Okay.
So it's not really the membership. Sorry, it's not really the membership level. I mean, I'm going to read between the lines and say we're talking about courses, and each course belongs to a membership level. I mean, the question's a little bit vague, but if we're talking about managing curriculum, I would just make them the editor of that curriculum.
Yeah, so WordPress has user roles, as many of us know, and there's a default, I think there's like 5 or 6 of them. You can edit those, and there's a plugin called User Role Editor. It's a super popular plugin. You can install that, and then you can start toggling the permissions of those roles. So Dave was talking about an editor, and by default in WordPress, like an editor can create posts, and they can add images to post, upload images and stuff like that, but they can't do all the things an editor can do, or an admin can do in the settings and whatnot. So maybe the editor role is sufficient, or maybe it's you can modify it with that plugin. If you want people to be able to just have the ability to create their own courses, then Learndash has the instructor role add-on, which is worth a look. That will allow them to kind of just have access to Learndash, like great courses, lessons, quizzes, and track progress of people in their courses. So that's also an option.
Oh, cool. See why I said I was uneducated? Now everyone knows. Next question. So how to retain members and how to recover members who have had credit cards fail. So retaining members is a kind of a whole different thing. We talked earlier about the value you can give them to try to keep them on in the community and things. But for the credit card failures, there's a couple things. We talked earlier around the SSL about how you can have a user log into the site and update their credit card. And this ties in with Infusionsoft's automation, where if you have a monthly subscription and let's say on month 3 their card fails, there's a place in Infusionsoft where you can set triggers to say, okay, card failed, what do you want to do? Do you want to email them? Do you want to add a tag? These types of things. And what a lot of people will do is they'll add a tag called a payF tag in kind of Memberium lingo, and it just stands for payment failure, but it also locks the user out of that content while they have that payment failure. So it doesn't remove their membership tag. It just adds a second tag that says, hey, they're a member, but they have a payment failure. So now we can take a little bit different action with that person. Also, then you would email them. So when their card fails, you send them an email, hey, there's a problem with your account. Dear so-and-so, we tried to bill your regular monthly subscription for X program, and it was declined. If you'd like to add a new card, you can click here to whatever, contact us with questions. And then they can just click that link, go into the site and update it. There is, though, also some merchant accounts that will automatically update cards. So some credit cards are failing just because they're expiring. But a lot of times those cards that expire, the credit card number doesn't change, just the expiration date changes. So with certain merchant accounts, they'll kind of help you auto-update those cards. I know Infusionsoft Payments, for example, the payment processor that Infusionsoft kind of endorses and sells internally, it does it automatically. There are a few others I know. I'm not sure which other merchant accounts that connect to Infusionsoft do this. But that's the main thing, is setting up your credit card triggers in Infusionsoft so that on failure, you're sending them an email. And you don't always have to lock them out. So some people they want to immediately lock the person out on their first failure. They'll say, hey, you have a 7-day grace period, your account will be locked if it's not basically corrected in so many days. And then Infusionsoft also can retry the card automatically. So if it's maybe that the person's credit card is over limit, then what I'll sometimes do, the default setting in Infusion is like, let's try the card every 2 days, 3 times. So we're going to try it basically 3 times within 6 days. And that's, I think, the default setting, which doesn't make a lot of sense because the likelihood of them, fixing their credit card issue in those 6 days isn't that high, really. So what I like to do sometimes is I'll say, let's try it every 6 days and try it, 3 or 4 times or whatever. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. You can get more aggressive. So for example, you could say every 6 days, 5 times. And what that would accomplish is it would say, we're going to try it on a Thursday this week, a Wednesday next week, a Tuesday the following week, a Monday the following week. And this is from a very large subscription client who I used to have. And they basically said, well, different people pay their bill on different days of the month, different days of the week, whatever. So if their credit card's over limit, at some point in that month, they're probably going to pay it down. So we're going to try to, basically retry it when they've paid it down so that it will go through. And that's why every 6 days. So that way you get different days of the week. And 6 days across 5 retries is 30 days. So you're going to kind of try them somewhere in that 30-day period. It's not perfect, but those are a couple of thoughts that I've got on it. Justin, real quick before we go to Dave, does Learndash do anything to deal with failed cards or anything in that area?
No, it doesn't. So it's going to be primarily whatever you use for accepting payments. So, by default, there's the standard like Stripe and PayPal integration to checkout as well. But I've seen people do similar things to what you've described who aren't using Infusionsoft, Micah, with like WooCommerce. I know they have add-ons, easy digital downloads as well. They have add-ons that will do these different types of follow-ups with people.
Cool. And Dave, do you have anything to add on to the credit card failure, solution?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay, cool. So next question, what templates do you recommend using with this combination? Setting up a multi-level membership site for gyms, gym owners, gym trainers, and clients. And I know, Justin, you mentioned a couple good themes earlier, like the university theme and a couple of those. Is there anything that comes to mind specifically for gyms, or just kind of based on this question, any additional themes you want to mention?
I can't think of anything for gyms. I can say that we have a list that we maintain of themes that have been developed with Learndash in mind, meaning they stylize Learndash in cool ways. So for anybody that is just curious on what kind of themes they can use, send a note to us at contact@learndash.com, and we'll get you that list so you can check them out.
Cool. And one theme that comes up, and we did mention it in the other video, but at least it comes to mind for me, is the Buddy Boss theme. So it makes a lot of assumptions, like that you want to have a community and so forth. But for anyone who wants to use Learndash and have a community, the Buddy Boss theme it does a ton for you automatically. So that might be, if you have no better ideas, those of you listening, that might be a place you could check as well. Next question, pretty broad question, and real quick, just just to ask Justin, how much longer do you want to stay on this call? I know we're over an hour now, and we can send people follow-ups for those we don't get to, but we've got about 5 more questions on the slides, and then obviously there's a bunch of questions in the feed. How long would you like to stay, just so we can kind of let them know?
Oh, I can stay a little bit longer for sure. We can zip through some of these questions. I'd happy to answer them if I can.
Cool. Yeah, let's stay about another 15 minutes or so and get through as much of this as we can. So the next question, I'd like to know your suggestions for dripping courses. And again, it's a broad question. So Justin, why don't you go ahead, and then I'll see if there's anything else I can add to it.
I think when we come out with our next major update, where we previewed some of the adding points to courses, which then unlocks the ability to take other ones, I think that's a good way for dripping courses. I'm coming back to it again, but that free plugin that I recently discovered, which I think is super cool, about enrolling users based on quiz performance, that might be another way to kind of guide people along a path. A progression path of courses or curriculum. So there's a few different ways, and I know there's elaborate ways to do it with Infusionsoft and Memberium.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming everyone out there knows what dripping is, just kind of giving them a piece at a time, and people have different motivations for dripping. So some of them say, I'm going to sell a monthly program, and therefore, instead of giving them all 600 videos in month 1, I'm going to give them 20 videos a month, right? And so I've got 30 months of content, and so they'll drip it that way. And one of the kind of creative ways I've seen this used with a client, he did tennis instruction. And what he did that I thought was interesting is he used both the Learndash course progression stuff, where you can't get to this next course until you've completed the first course. But then he also used some throttling with Infusionsoft tags. So he said, yeah, when you complete course 1, you can go to course 2, but not, within 7 days. You have to spend at least 7 days in course 1. And so within some of the videos, what it would say, as they're flying through it, oh, I've watched this, I watched this, I watched this, it would come up with a message if they didn't have the tag, and it would basically say, hey, you're doing awesome. I think it was actually a little video from him. Hey, you're doing awesome. I'm so glad that you're loving the course. But what I want you to do, instead of moving ahead, is go ahead and practice, your backhand or your forehand or whatever it was, the serve, for another 2 days before you move on, because I need you to get it into your muscle memory before I teach you something else. So he kind of actually throttled them a little bit, but let them also kind of progress. And the Infusionsoft campaign I was showing you guys earlier, where I said, when they're done with this course, it lets them into the next one. That's using the tags to limit them. And that's why I'm saying you can use the tags to limit them, but you can also use the timers to limit the tags. And that's what he was doing, is saying, yes, go ahead and give them this tag, but only if it's after, a certain period of time, so they don't go too fast. Because he knows if they go too fast, they're not really going to get the value. They're not going to stay, they're not going to refer other people and whatnot, because they're not actually going out and, swinging the racket enough to get it into their muscle memory. And he's very big into kind of the mind-body connection and whatnot. But like Justin said, there's more elaborate ways. Learndash, I know, has its own whole kind of drip functionality where you can pick certain dates, like this lesson's released on this day, this lesson's released on this day. So for classes or groups who are going through kind of as a group at certain times, they're all sold in at a certain time, and then, hey, the course starts March 15th, kind of a thing. There's also that functionality. So you really have a lot of options. Depending on your motivation for dripping it, most people who are dripping it are trying to extend the life of a customer. But like I said, other people are dripping it to actually improve the experience, to spoon feed it a little and make sure they're getting, A before B, B before C. So we could go all over with that one, but in the interest of time, I'll kind of jump ahead. So this for you, definitely, Justin. Is Learndash going to integrate a webinar platform and or forum in the future? And if not, what do you recommend?
Well, for forums, we already integrate with bbPress, so that is one option. There's also a neat free plugin on WordPress.org that is more. So bbPress, for those that don't know, that's a forum plugin that is owned by Automatic, which is the brand behind WordPress. So it's very stable, it's very good. It's a big plugin, and there's a lot of features. So if you wanted something more streamlined, there is a plugin on WordPress.org, and I'm just going to pull up the name real quick because it's worth a look. If you just want to have something where people in certain groups can comment to one another and not see, perhaps not see the comments of another group, it's called Group Comments for Learndash. So that's worth a look. And it just uses the built-in comments fields on like the lesson pages or course page or what have you. For the webinar piece, we don't have a direct integration. What you could do right now is use Zapier. And you can, for example, on course enrollment, maybe it depends on the Zaps that are available. So for those that don't know, Zapier is a way to connect two different apps. You kind of go through Zapier. It makes it very easy. You don't have to code anything. It's just kind of picking what you want to happen. So we have some triggers. So you could do like upon course enrollment, connect Learndash to, and then if there's a webinar platform like GoToWebinar or something like that, you can use some of their activities in there. So maybe I haven't looked, but there could be something with adding them to a contact list or adding them to a attendee perhaps. So it's something we may look into in terms of a tighter integration. I don't know, perhaps Memberium has something that allows you to connect people to a webinar platform, but right now there isn't like a direct integration without Zapier.
Yeah, and we don't have any direct integration to a webinar platform necessarily, but we do also some additional integration to BB Press as well, so that could be a good choice. And for example, you can limit the people's access to parts of the form based on their tags. So hey, this is the gold member area, only gold members get in there based on the gold tag, and over here's the silver or bronze member area. And one question I want to cherry pick out of the question feed, just because I thought it was funny, is somebody asked, curious, who is Dave? So in case anybody missed it, Dave, who you occasionally hear chiming in, he's the guy who writes Memberium and he wrote the software Memberium and does a lot of the support documentation, Facebook group and stuff. So he's probably #1 nerd in the room, most likely. And I don't think he'd mind me saying that.
I don't know. Justin's pretty close. I have not had any reason to say much anything because Justin's nailing it.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
Yeah, see, that's the difference. It's a compliment for Dave. No, just kidding. So what is the best practice to keep pages from getting messy as I keep customizing and using Memberium codes and tags? Eventually it gets hard to see what I'm doing. So I'm guessing that who's ever's asking this is using a lot of short codes to make their page very dynamic. And it can get a little bit confusing if you have a ton of that. Because I've seen people who will use 10, 15, 20 conditions or short codes that are conditional on one page, and some people will even nest those within each other, like if this and this and this, then show this other thing. One of the things Dave mentioned, I don't remember what the context was when he mentioned it, but one of the things you can do is you can have a short code that actually brings in another page. So you might be able to break this up, meaning instead of putting all that code on one single page, make some subpages, like part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. And on that part 1, have as much of the data as you want. On part 2, have as much of the data as you want. And then on the actual page you're going to show to the user, like the official page, you merge in those other pages. So there's a short code to merge another page's content into the current page. And I've used that myself as a solution. And I think there's a lot of use cases for it, where again, you're just basically spreading out your coding onto multiple pages. And there's a lot of reasons to do that. So depending on the use case here, but that's one workaround that I've found to keep the page a lot tighter and simpler, so that it can also, with the conditions, get a little confusing. So hopefully that makes sense for those of you who even know why they would be doing this. I think it'll probably make sense for those of you who probably don't worry about it. So the best practice for what campaigns look like when you look at them, I used to move participants through a 5-week program with weekly emails and certificates at the end, all automated. Again, as they get more complicated, it gets harder to see what the campaign is doing. So this is, again, where I would break those campaigns up. If you're saying, hey, my campaign is too full because I've got 50 courses in it, it's like, well, maybe turn that into 5 different campaigns with 10 courses apiece being managed in them, or even less. Some people I know have 1 campaign per course. There's not really a limit on the number of Infusionsoft campaigns you can use. But I know for myself, even the campaign I was showing you earlier, it's got about 12 in there. And it's not too bad. It's not too big of a mess. But I have thought, should this be campaign 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever? And there's reasons for doing that too. Like you can build campaign 1 for course 1, make it exactly how you want it, and then clone that campaign for course 2, and then clone that for course 3. So, both on the WordPress side, it sounds like one of the questions was on the WordPress side, and the Infusionsoft side, just breaking them into smaller chunks a lot of the time will make it more digestible, and as an admin, you can find where you need to go make the change. It also separates the problems, meaning, like I said earlier, if I have a giant page of code and I make a mistake somewhere, it's harder to find that mistake within the sea of code. Whereas if I have several pages where it's broken out into several spots, I can go test them individually and be like, oh, the problem's with page 4, or part 4 of this section. Same thing with Infusionsoft campaigns. There are not many instances where you can, do something that messes up a campaign. But for those instances where you can, you're better off messing up a smaller campaign than a big, gigantic one. And I'm saying that from, 10 plus years as an Infusionsoft consultant. Breaking them into smaller chunks can be really useful. So it's kind of some general advice, but hopefully that helps with that one. And I'll kind of jump ahead. I'm not even... I'll skip that one for a simpler one, just in the interest of time, and we'll have to send an email about that one. But how can you make a content-heavy module like a tax return analysis, which requires handouts they can work through with exercise, mobile-friendly? The handout exercises are essential to the learning. So basically, if they've got a really complex process that's not just videos, but also handouts and different things, how can you make this more friendly and especially mobile-friendly? Justin, any thought?
And this was the easier question?
Well, the other one was just a big mess. So Justin, what do you think from a Learndash perspective on this one?
Yeah, that's a tough one, especially if there's a handout that needs to be downloaded and completed. So there is the assignment capability in Learndash where you can require somebody to upload an assignment, like a Word document. I don't know the context of this exercise, but if they download it and they complete it online, they can upload it, and then you can prevent progression in the course until that assignment's been reviewed, or you can allow them to go and continue on. So either way, so that, from a mobile device perspective, when you have to download something onto your mobile device, it does get a little bit tricky. That's where we usually see people more at the desktop or laptop or desktop, whatever. For making something interesting with exercises, let me give you a resource. There is a free platform called h5p.org. It allows for really cool interactive things within your lessons, like flashcards, for example. Picture hotspots. So people can click on a picture or arrange stuff onto a picture. It just makes it a little bit dynamic. It's a neat little plugin that you can use. It's actually not a WordPress thing, but they have a WordPress plugin to connect it. So h5p.org is really cool if you want to create engaging exercises that are a little bit more than just text and video. So that if you want to take it a step further, you can actually connect H5P to Learndash using XAPI, Tin Can API. That's where it gets a little bit more nerdy, but that is definitely something you can do and record kind of how people are doing in those little exercises in a learning record store through XAPI. But h5p.org, it would be my recommendation for creating engaging courses or engaging exercises for tax courses.
Nice. Yeah, and I was thinking of the same elements, right? The assignments portion and these different things. And then for me, probably it would be to say, don't put all this on one thing. Make it a lot of small steps, a lot of baby steps, which Learndash will let you do, and still clump it together within a lesson or course. We're about out of time, and Linda, whose question I just skipped, she called me out in the question saying I just had skipped her question. So yes, we'll absolutely send you an email answer to that. It'll probably be a little bit more in depth that way anyhow. But we're just about to the end of the half hour here. I know there's a bunch of extra questions in the GoToWebinar little thing here. So what we'll do, like I said, is we'll we'll get as many of these as we can, back by email. I'm even kind of wondering if I might go through and answer these into a video so that we can share those instead of just answering everyone individually, because some of them are probably useful for more than one person. But yeah, definitely, if you are on the registration list for this webinar, or if you have submitted a question, just look for an answer from us within the next couple of days, middle of next week at the latest, most likely, and we'll see the best way to get those out. But just want to thank everyone for coming, and thank you, Justin, for coming and spending your time with us. Thank you, Dave and Andrew, for helping run the webinar. Yeah, thank you. And everybody have a great day. We'll send out a recording of this. We'll also, like I said, we'll answer any questions that we missed either in the chat here during the call or any of those that were sent beforehand if we didn't get to them. So thanks again, Justin and Dave.
No, it was a pleasure. It's always fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
See you guys. And thank you, everyone, for watching as well.